Alright, with the first trailer for James Gunn's Superman finally out, it seemed like the perfect time for a follow-up to my last video on the project, giving an update on how my feelings have evolved. That video was largely negative, focused on all my worries and fears about the movie and the future of DC under James Gunn. While I still stand by most of what I said, a lot has happened since then, and I admit, a lot of what we've seen, especially this week, has really gotten me hyped. So if you're new to the channel, I'm just thinking out loud here, so if you enjoy my brain vomit, you know where the like and subscribe buttons are. And without further ado, let's dive into the latest incarnation of the Man of Tomorrow. Let me start off by saying that I love Man of Steel, and I even love a lot of Batman v Superman, as much of a mess as the movie is as a whole. I don't consider myself one of Zack Snyder's fanatic religious zealots, though I certainly was at one time. I'm not viciously trashing everything from DC until Zack Snyder is put back in charge. I want James Gunn's DCU to be good. I do. And I acknowledge the faults of DC's previous attempts to tackle both Superman and his world. It's just that we almost got what would have easily been my favorite version of the DC universe. A grounded world just like our own, suddenly forced to tackle the existence of godlike beings walking among us. A world that explores the relationship between those beings and the terrified mortals they try to serve and protect and inspire. A world that challenges our heroes' beliefs and principles with painful and difficult decisions, with no easy solutions, and forces them to ask what it really means to be a hero. It would have been a thoughtful and respectful deconstruction that establishes our heroes' mythological status by placing them in such a believable world and showing them to us from the perspective of ordinary people. This is what Snyder's universe had going for it, and what I'll be mourning for years to come. Though, to be clear, James Gunn didn't kill it. It was already starting to go off the rails with BVS. Side note, I've been working on outlining my fixed and completed version of the DC Universe as I imagine it based on the groundwork of the Snyderverse, which I hope to someday release in some form, so if you want to see that, subscribe to support the channel. But anyway, that's where I'm coming from going into this new era of DC films. I won't reiterate all the concerns I raised in my previous video, but most fundamentally, this whole project just felt like a lighthearted and relatively safe approach to the source material that wouldn't risk offending the fans by challenging the characters and wouldn't feel nearly as epic as Snyder made them by trivializing the fantastical. I was afraid that James Gunn, with his lighthearted, wacky, and comedic style, not to mention his frequent vulgarity and gratuitous violence, wouldn't be capable of giving his titular character the weight, depth, and reverence he deserves. But then, well, I suppose it's been a gradual process as we've heard more and more from behind the scenes, but I've become increasingly curious and excited to see what Gunn is up to. My concerns aren't by any means gone, but I've also found reason for hope. We've heard the story takes inspiration from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, an old film about a young idealistic politician fighting corruption in the world of politics in what seems like a pointless struggle. James Gunn said as he announced the release of the trailer that this would be a story about what it means to be a hero. In the trailer itself, we see Superman facing ridicule and persecution from the public, much like how Henry Cavill's did in BVS. While we know next to nothing for sure about the plot details of the film, we do know Superman is going to be up against fellow heroes who've sold out to governments and corporations, like Maxwell Lord and maybe even Lex Luthor. And it seems likely he'll get in trouble for not doing the same, and will have to redefine what a superhero really is, paving the way for a new generation of heroes, potentially including the Justice League we all know and love. This all has made me much more hopeful that the film will, in fact, be an intelligent and respectful exploration of Superman as a character and everything he stands for. James Gunn's seemingly genuine enthusiasm for the project and everything he's said about it lately has had me thinking that maybe he is capable of making more than bloody, vulgar, and irreverent action comedies, and I think I'm willing to give him a fair chance to win me over with his take on the greatest hero of all time. Admittedly, another factor in my softening towards the prospect of another actor replacing the excellent Henry Cavill in the cape and tights has been my recent binging of Superman television I've never before had the chance to watch. I had a hard time imagining any other face in a Superman movie that I could accept as the man himself, but finally watching every episode of Superman and Lois streaming on Max in just over a week has convinced me that I can, in fact, not only tolerate, but love more than one Superman. I want to make a whole video just praising Superman and Lois as soon as the final season is available on Max, but my point for now is that I was afraid of David Corenswet replacing Henry Cavill. But while I do still mourn the now gone chance Henry had to be the definitive Superman for a generation of DC fans, I now realize that Superman is more than a man. He is a symbol, an ideal, and more than one man can embody that ideal. I will never not love Henry Cavill's Superman, but I finally accepted that allowing myself to love David Corenswet's Superman will not change that. George Reeves, Christopher Reeves, Dean Cain, Brandon Routh, Tom Welling, Henry Cavill, Tyler Hoechlin, and David Corenswet can all be Superman without detracting anything from one another. I don't have to let go of the past in order to embrace the future. Look, if this movie sucks, it sucks, but I've decided that I'm not going to be the guy hating it just because I decided I was going to before I had good reason. If I hate it, it will be because the film deserved it, and for no other reason. So now, as a new age dawns for DC, even though I still have my fears, even though this most likely will not be my favorite version of the character, I'm finally ready to look up with hope for the future. But how do you feel about the future of DC? Let me know in the comments. I'm just here to kick off the discussion. With how increasingly divided the DC fandom has become over the last decade, I hope I was able to speak to both the Snyder fans and the Gunn fans, and I hope we can have a productive conversation down below. Until next time, never stay silent.